Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, which are just conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. Today, even though you won't be seeing this on the International Day of Play, which is June 11th of every year. Today, that International Play of the International Day of Play is being celebrated across the world. And so we hope that when you view this, you'll think back fondly on the day when you took some time just to play. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch today is Kevito Clark and Courtney Taylor. Welcome. So Kevito is the founder of Love, Peace, and Games. Play It Forward, a 501c3 that facilitates free and donation-based community programming throughout Los Angeles. Love, Peace, and Spades answers the calling for the increased need for third spaces that promote health, wellness, and the preservation of Black family heirlooms. And today's is such an awesome one that I'm really excited about. So just know that Kevito and this program have been in the LA Travel Weekly and on Fox 11 and on KCAL News. And every week they have a game day or a play day for adults in their community. It's fabulous. Courtney is a master's student at Penn State University studying recreation, park, and tourism management. She's a native of Charlotte, North Carolina, and received her bachelor's degree from Claflin University in 2019. Courtney's research focuses on play and the history of play for Black Americans. And outside of academics, Courtney enjoys music, sports, and trying new restaurants. Me too. So community members for Love, Peace, and Spades. Is it still at the Line Hotel, Kevito, on Wednesdays?
Yes, yes, and just to clarify for the listener, is we're every first Wednesday of the month, and then we also host events that are outside of the hotel. Say, for instance, this might have already occurred by the time the recording is premiered, but we would have had a pop-up in Leimert Park for Juneteenth, a sort of barbecue game night for the 4th of July in downtown LA. And we have a couple hosts. We try to do a summer pop-up series, so we just will go to where people are at to play.
Oh, that's just so wonderful. The title of this session is the recipes we keep. I just love that title. So talk to us more about this wonderful title and what you were thinking about when you came up with it.
So the idea between both of our respective parties is to preserve the art of play for our respective communities, and colloquially we call anything that has a little bit of season or flavor recipes. And so the recipes we keep is kind of a catch-all to kind of go into the idea of us wanting to preserve the art of play, the type of games that we play, and hold them near and dear to ourselves and have them, available for the next generation to play.
So Love, Peace, and Spades really honors the Black culture with the games that you're also introducing in these play sessions at times. And you talked in a previous Porch Play Chat about those types of games, but would you remind us of some of the things that you do on those first Wednesdays of every month?
Sure. For the listener, so we host a monthly game night where we call ourselves a Hush Harbor, a place for where people can take off their cool and find refuge while playing what we call Black family heirlooms, which is spades, bid whist, tonk, dominoes. There's also Uno. Whenever we partner up with another event or another party, we might end up playing a game that's native to their culture. So A few years back, we partnered up with this organization called Motherland Sounds, which is East African in nature. And so we play Mancala. We had people teach how to play Mancala. I know coming up, there's a couple other games that might be of African nature that we're looking forward to having taught to people to learn how to play as well.
And I think what is so beautiful about that is that it preserves that rich cultural experience for young people who may never have played these games in the past, or for families who have missed that community of playing those culturally significant, historical sort of ways of playing together. And so that's the piece I love about the work that you're doing, that it's, and now it's expanding to other cultures and bringing in those games as well, so that the community gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have that sense of belonging within a community. And I think that is what is so beautiful about this endeavor that you're in. And so can you talk a little bit about more about the recipes we keep, and how this whole experience is strengthening a community? Can you give us a little bit more information about that?
Well, I would defer to my colleague Courtney, who can speak to like the academic side of what the importance of keeping these recipes whole and preserved look like.
Yes, so I would say, as far as the importance of keeping these recipes, there are lots of different family gatherings that occur, not just exclusively to the Black community, but I would say they are of importance to the Black community. And one of those things I would say is like family reunions, or really any type of family gathering. And you can go to any one of those gatherings and see a lot of, if not all of the games that are done with Love, Peace, and Spades at their events. For example, you will see spades. And if you look across generations, in several older generations, spades was very prevalent, heavily played, like everybody knew how. And spades is unique because it is passed down. It's not necessarily always taught, depending on where you go and who you're with. But you kind of pick it up by watching, or if you are taught, it's kind of like there's like this oral tradition of teaching how to play spades, right? So when it comes to preservation, I think that the work that Kevito's organization is doing is very important, because when you look to the younger generations, even people my age, and I'm 28, by the way, they don't know how to play spades. And so I think that organizations like Love, Peace, and Spades are so important to keeping our recipes, as you could say, because we want that to continue, that tradition, or just, that coming together and building that sense of community. And an excellent, excellent way to do that is certainly through play and through games such as spades and dominoes and top.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is the beauty, that it becomes, if we have a lost generation that don't know how to play these cultural, what has been in the history of that culture, then sometimes the communication between that generation and the older generation may lose some of its power, right? Because they don't share anything that's common. And so that tradition of these recipes or games, just like the tradition of having family reunions, or a tradition that is like endemic to that culture, is so important to keep alive, so that people have that sense of belonging and can see themselves as a part of a group that has shared experiences. And that's why I love this whole approach. It just makes me so happy. And I wish the white culture would think more about this instead of just sports, right? So talk to me more about your outreach and the things that you're doing. I love all these other events, especially the Juneteenth one and the July 4th one. And just so you know, the National Day of Play for IPA USA, I'm looking at my calendar, is September 20th of this year. And so it's that like the week of September 20th. So it'll go from the 15th of September to the 21st. But we do the National Day of Play every year on the third Saturday in September. And so you can always plan for that National Day of Play. And so we'll have play community events for families all across the US. And so think about something that you might be able to plan in September for that would continue this tradition of play in your sort of initiative. So Courtney, is there anything that you were learning in your degree at Penn State that has contributed to your interest in this sort of movement of maintaining and reestablishing these recipes?
Sure. I haven't taken any specific classes, I would say, related to play. As far as the research I'm doing, it would be more so my background is more so in some of the literature that I've been reading. Um, but as far as experiences or coursework that I have done that I've used to kind of structure what my thesis is going to look like, I went to the Museum of Play and the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. So I got to see some of their exhibits, hopefully going to be working with them as a part of my thesis.
Oh,
I also just did a qualitative methods course in the spring semester. And that gave me the opportunity to kind of play around with some of the ideas and thoughts that I have for my thesis. For example, we had an assignment where, and this was just for practice, so it's not anything that's like published or I'm gonna be publishing. But there was an assignment that we had where we had to make an interview guide and then interview a few people just for practice, of course. And so a lot of my questions were related to what play looked like for Black Americans growing up. This generation was more so people my age. So the generation that I'll be focusing on for my thesis will be a lot different. So those answers might be a lot different. But just hearing about what play means to people, and again, the importance of connection and engagement with family through play is something that I hope to further explore and expand on. Also, some of the lessons and values that are instilled through play, but more specifically for Black Americans. So I'm really excited. Hopefully, I'll be able to do that this summer. I do have to go through like IRB process and finalize certain details, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to start doing that research more so this summer.
and
And
that will be
Courtney,
fascinating. Yes, go ahead,
sorry,
Kavita. I'm
I
sorry.
wanted to ask you, Courtney, like without giving any spoilers, because there is a generational gap between what sort of forms of plays people have engaged themselves with. So like you have like the 50s and 60-year-olds who don't really know much about the video games or the computer games, and then you have my generation, which is kind of like the in between. We know the landline phones and the cell phones. Do you see, irrespective to what sort of research you've conducted, any through lines between the generations that are kind of akin to how they learned or where they learned from, or some of the impact that you might see mirrors across the timeline?
Yes, speaking from personal experience and just conversations that have been had either amongst peers or the people that I've interviewed, I would say one thing that is still common is at family gatherings, there's always some type of focus on games, whether it's card games or, and I would say in younger generations, more. I guess competitive games, kind of like those minute to win it challenges that you see going viral all over social media, right? Um, but although not everyone in my generation knows how to play spades. The few people that do still will incorporate spades into their events. So just that gathering and coming together, and you will see some type of play still going on. I know we focus a lot, I would say, on games that are played, but there's other forms of play that you can consider, like music and dance, that I think has been sustained throughout generations. For example, Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. Like that's a common song you'll hear at a cookout, whether it's a cookout with all ages or even like cookouts my age, or some type of gathering. And I would say card games, in addition to spades, such as Uno, which is a little bit newer, Phase 10, things of that nature. I think those are games that across generations, most people will play. But again, going back to the title of our episode, the recipes that we keep, we want to see a continuation of games that have been played across times, or games our grandparents played, or our grandparents, being passed along to younger generations. So I think that there comes a point in time, in every younger person's life. By young person, I mean, early 20s as you start adulthood, where you want that cultural connection to those who came before you. And so eventually people do start to look back at, hey, what were my family members doing? And I want something to feel close to them. So they do start to pick up spades, or they do start to pick up other types of events or activities that their families did before, and their family members did before them, to try to get that cultural connection.
Yeah, that makes me think of one of our coaches that we have, Yasmin Monet. She's one of our Spades Academy coaches who teaches people how to play bid whist, which she would say is the father of spades, which is true. It's historically proven that during the Pullman Porters Association, when they were traveling through the country as porters, that was the game that they played, and it eventually like became a migration tool. They started to pass that game along across the country to other fellow Black Americans, and her relationship with the game stemmed from her relationship with her mother, and unfortunately, sadly, her mother passed, but it deepened the bond through that game, and being able to teach others how to play was central to her, being a big champion for the game. And I hear her in my mind right now talking about, make sure you tell them that there would be no spades without bid whist. So, just for the record, letting people know that there is a evolution in play within the Black community, Black American community, tied to history, and our association with this country. And to kind of like bookend it a bit, if I were to say that bid whist was considered the chess of its day,
Mhm.
spades would be the checkers, and where the younger generation took hold of that, took what worked well from bid whist and applied it to spades, and discarded the things that were seemed to be complicated. And even now, in this stage, to hear younger folks say spades is complicated, it's like, well, if spades is complicated, then bid whist is like the Rubik's Cube to some people, because that was always some of the things that were being discussed back and forth prior to us coming into this age that we're in now.
One of the things that I thought was also fascinating, Courtney, about what you said is that when people get into their 20s, right, they begin to want to not necessarily, um, uh, well, I do kind of think necessarily, and I'll just do my experience with my kids. I knew nothing. I knew nothing when my kids were teenagers, right? And it wasn't until they were 22, 23, 24 that they would go, oh, yeah, you were really smart. It was really interesting that seems to be a developmental stage of moving into adulthood, when people begin to reflect on, wow, my parents were really smart. And yes, they did make that good decision. Instead of, they were mean, they were restrictive, they were controlling. It's so interesting to see that happen. My kids would say, Mom, I know, when I was in my teen years, I wasn't the easiest teen to deal with, but boy, I get it now, and thank you for getting me through that. It was really interesting to me, and I was wondering if you're seeing that same sort of developmental piece where you want to say, remember when we used to, or remember my favorite thing that you would make is blah blah blah. And even today, my kids are now in their 30s, but even back then they would say, could we have that again for dinner? Or could you make that on a special occasion? And that was just food, right? So, it's those memories that I think that we finally begin to reflect on, um, when we're sort of out of the crazy teenage years where everything is crazy for those poor kids. So are you seeing that in the population that you did your interviews with who were more college age students?
Yeah, and I would say it was a very small sample size because it was just an assignment. It was three people.
Yeah, that's
So I don't want to generalize. However, I
right.
can speak from those conversations, but also my personal experience. One thing that I'm very grateful for is the fact that both sides of my family, so on my mother's side and my father's side, are very large and there's multiple generations still alive and I've been able to meet and spend time with. For example, on my mother's side, her father, so my grandfather, was one of 11. So they have a bunch of kids who have kids who have kids, right? And on my father's side, he's one of seven, but my grandmother, so his mother, had two sisters, and they all have at least, I think, three to four children as well.
Mhm.
And then, of course, there's some other, patriarchal and matriarchal figures as well on both of those sides. So growing up, family gatherings, we do a big event on my mother's side for Christmas, and then we do family reunions every 2 years on my father's side. Family events were something that I will say I enjoyed them when I was younger, but it wasn't until I was older that I had that greater appreciation and like understanding the importance of this space, of this coming together, and this closeness with your family. Because if you look across history, people were stripped from their families and separated and had no way to be able to come back together, right? So I think now I look at it as I I kind of, although I knew who my family members were and like some of the history, now that I'm older, almost to the point where I'm in my 30s, I want to really know and understand the legacy of both of my families because when it comes time for me to have children, that's something that I want to pass along to them. I also think that, there's a certain sense of pride that comes about, or we like to talk about it as a rite of passage when you're finally able to engage in certain games if you weren't able to when you were younger. And so that's kind of part of, wanting to have that connection. Just it's about legacy, togetherness, and being able to carry on, or what do they say, pass the torch along, right, to younger generations. So.
I think that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, Kavito, is there another aspect of love, peace, and spades that you're thinking about adding to what you're currently doing? I mean, I know we were doing community events and previously, but it seems like you've expanded those in the community. Are you seeing more people come on Wednesday nights on the first Wednesday of the month? Are you hearing people say, well, could we do this at this location on another day and time so that we can engage that community? That's what I'm curious about.
Yes, we have a few things in the works to try and expand our outreach to also fall in a weekend instead of just a weekday, or at least close enough to a weekend. I always say Happy Friday Eve, so Thursdays to me are like the unofficial Friday because people are really just that's their one foot into the weekend before
Mm-hmm.
Friday, which technically, if we were really being honest with ourselves, this country should have a 4-day work week where Thursday is the Friday and Friday is our Saturday, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's the goal. And then ultimately, like with our education initiative, refine that in a way that we can be able to go into community centers and libraries and academia to kind of teach the games that we already play and kind of showcase how it's an alternate pathway for those who may have a different style of learning or choose to find a way to kind of bridge a gap between how people learn today and how people learned yesteryear.
So I was wondering, in the, YMCA's or in early care and education programs, um, and typically YMCA's is the one I'm focusing on because that seems to be one of the places that we see lots of before and after school children. And, those kids might be up to 12, but then they might have other sort of populations that would be like the 13 to 15 or 17-year-old group. I'm wondering if there's a way to begin to engage that group that might be in these specific places
Hmm.
to maybe send in a mentor to teach them some of these games, not necessarily maybe one of your coaches initially, and then the kids could learn to teach the other kids so that we start that sort of protecting those recipes earlier on in life.
No, you've hit the nail on the head. That's primarily how we plan to execute our education initiative called Play It Forward. It's just a matter of refining some of the LOI, the letter of intent that we have, so we can be able to have funding to present our studies and our surveys to those schools and those other places to give them some of the metrics that we've already kind of accrued
Mm-hmm.
this past year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just think that would be so powerful because again, sometimes I think kids that are in those crazy teen years that we all went through, and if I was a bad kid, I was a bad kid in middle grades, right? So that's just, and I was always a good kid, but that was when I was the worst. Um, is is that they don't have a sense of who they are yet. They're in that stage of development where Erickson's stage of development where they're really confused and they don't feel like they have a place. And so they want to belong somewhere. And so it's just so interesting that sort of particular developmental stage of those teenage years would be a wonderful place to help them feel grounded. And so that is maybe something you could put into the letter of intent that, here's where they are in Erickson stages of development. Here's where sometimes they begin to make decisions that aren't healthy for them just because they're seeking belonging. And that's any teenager, regardless of their race or ethnicity. And so that might be a way to find funding, especially if you can find youth um, grantors that are focused on youth development. That might be a great place to look for some funding because I really think that would be a powerful tool in helping them feel like, oh, this is not only is this steeped in this history of my culture, but it's also some way I can participate um, in the experiences of my ancestors. So just something to think about. But that's the one age group. I think it's fabulous
Hmm.
that older people come together and are mentoring younger people in doing this. But then again, that's another way that you could maybe use some of the older people who are coming on those Wednesday nights to help in their local communities with kids that are in those teenage years to introduce them to something that would be fun for them that has rich cultural background and history. But anyway, so that this has been fabulous. Any closing comments that you want to make before we close out? Courtney, it's been so nice to meet you too.
Oh, thank you. It's been nice to meet you as well.
Anything you want to say to close us out, Kevito?
Yeah, so thank you for giving us the time to talk with you today. Big kudos to the International Play Association for providing a platform for people to engage and play.
Mhm.
Thank you, Courtney, for joining me on this illuminating chat. And I hope you guys all have a good time listening and watching from home and continue to learn more about us at lovepeaceandspace.com. And also, if Courtney has anywhere that she wants people to be pointed to learn more about her upcoming research and her fingers crossed exhibition at the Museum of Play in Rochester, I'll let her take it away.
I do not unfortunately have a website or anything at the moment. You should be able to find me on Penn State's website under the Office of Scholars Programs. And if you just type, my name is Courtney Taylor. I believe if you search Courtney Taylor, Penn State RPTM, it might pop up, or Recreation Parks and Tourism Management, it might pop up. However, though, Deb, I will send you my contact information.
Good.
And so if that is something that I feel comfortable with you sharing that if people would like to reach out to me.
Great. I will put it in the little clip that we use on the YouTube channel. So stay right there while I close this out. Don't go anywhere. So to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.